Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest edition of New Music Shuffle. This is the show where I talk about several albums that I've been enjoying over the past month or so and recommend them to you guys, tell you a little bit about them, how I feel about them, what you could expect if you want to dive in deeper to them, what they sound like, those types of things. And basically it's just a show to be able to share what I've been loving, but also to introduce you guys to great new music that you may not be aware of. And sometimes to give my thoughts on some of the major prog releases that are coming out that I just didn't have time to do a full review of. So that's the format here. I'm trying more and more to do shorter reviews for these. I want to just hit on some of the main points, not dive too deep. I don't want the show to be too long, so I'm going to try to keep each review roughly, under 2 minutes or so. Just give you an impression and my general thoughts about it. Before moving on to the next one. So hopefully you appreciate that style, and so without further ado, let's jump into the albums. So first on my list, I've got the Mars Volta and their new self-titled record. Mars Volta, of course, is a band I've covered before on the channel. I did a whole album ranking of their catalog prior to this one. So it's a band that I've loved and that has been close to my heart. I really loved them when I was back in college and discovering a lot of progressive rock music. It was a good balance between the progressive rock I was falling in love with and some of that alternative indie rock that I was still liking from my high school years. So this new album really takes a different turn, though, compared to their prior albums. This is after a big hiatus. It seemed like the band was pretty much done after their last album, Nocturnicate, which came out about 10 years ago. So it's interesting that they're coming back after all that time away, but they're embracing almost a whole new style in their sound and in their music. This is a bit more of a poppier record than what we're used to hearing from them. So if you really like the old Mars Volta, the Delouse and the Comatorium, Francis the Mute, expanded, chaotic, crazy, epic progressive rock that they did, similar to King Crimson and some of these stalwarts of the genre, this really isn't that. They've actually gone the complete opposite direction. Every track on here is short and streamlined and has a bit of a poppier sound, more accessible, but I can't help but love it anyways because it's a band that I love. And it's not just standard top 40 radio hits. They're doing really creative, interesting music here that is beyond just what you hear on the surface level of radio today. It's definitely strong melodies, delving into some interesting genres and creating a lot of variety and interest in the rhythms and in the sounds. It's really well produced and it just sounds really good to me. Maybe it threw me off a little at first because it's not that same chaotic, adventurous prog rock style that they're known for. But it's just such a pleasant listen, and it's a quick album. It's 44 minutes. Each track is under 4 minutes long, and you get a lot of different variety and interesting things in the mix, taking elements from world music, Latin style rhythms, electronica, trip hop, pop, and of course some of that prog influence like on their previous albums. Black Light Shine, which starts the album, has these great Latin beats and this bomba type sound. The lively atmosphere really gets you going right off the bat and leads right into Graveyard Love, which embraces more of a trip hop electronica sound, maybe a bit of a slower build, but really sounds really great and has some great melodies to it. As we go throughout, there's Vigil, which is a great poppier number with a pleasant dream pop style sound. Cerulean I really like as a pleasant ballad with a bit of a blues touch to it and maybe an indie rock style aesthetic. I think Flash Burns from Flashbacks is a great cool throwback to some of their earlier stuff, some more aggressive guitar tones and interesting rhythms and soundscapes, but still with this newer aesthetic baked in of a more laid-back pop influence. So it's just a really cool variety of different things. Palmful of Crux is a great slow-burning, jazzier number. There's some horns in the mix and some jazzy piano that they play with. I really like No Case Gain, a cool rocker with some quick, almost rap-style vocals in sections. Tourmaline is a beautiful acoustic ballad. Equus 3 is one of the more proggier numbers, some great jazzy keyboards and heavy sounds drenched in some electronica touchstones. And Requisition is a great final track with some off-kilter, unusual guitar tones. almost going back to their minor key sound and a darker edge to their earlier days. So just a really cool record with a lot of variety and different things on board. You have that electronica style element on play, but you also have some of those harder edged angular style guitars. You have some great rhythms and Latin beats, some salsa in the mix, almost a tango style with Que Dios te maldiga mi corazón. Just some really cool stuff in the mix that I really enjoyed, and so I find it to be a really pleasant listen, and maybe doesn't reach the heights of their classic progressive works like De Louse and the Comatorium and Francis the Mute, but as just a singular listen, it's some of the strongest just indie rock pop music with complex structures that I've heard this year, so really a great album that I've been enjoying. Next album I want to talk about is Muse and their album Will of the People. Another big record that a lot of people have been talking about, and I just wanted to touch on. There's been mixed feelings about this, I think, from what I've observed from different reviewers and different publications. Some people really don't care for this. They think it's just not up to the heights of the group's greatest efforts from back in the day. Some people are having a lot of fun with it and think it's almost a coming back into their own and really embracing their old school sounds and just really having almost a revival of their great classic era. To me, I'm probably somewhere in the middle of all that. I'm not a huge Muse fan, to be honest. I liked some of their records. I haven't really delved too deep. It's not really that I don't like things. It's just that I haven't heard a lot and haven't really done a deep dive into them. But I listened to this album because it got some measure of buzz, and I just had a blast listening to this record. I think it's fun. I like the concept that I've heard from interviews and different things that the idea was they were approached to do a greatest hits album, but they didn't really want to do that, so instead they crafted an album that's a greatest hits album in style, but all new material, so it really harkens back to a lot of the touchstones of their classic works, but does it in a way that it's producing new songs to enjoy. So I thought that was a cool idea to frame an album around. And there's a lot of darker topics here. They're talking about how the state of the world and how bad things are, almost an apocalyptic style feel, especially in the final track of the album. But there's just so much fun in the music, it's a fun album as you go through each track and find different variety and different fun things to go with. I love Compliance. It's reminiscent of tracks from The Resistance, just a great synth-drenched electronica poppy hit, really harkening back to some of their big songs from back in that Resistance era. I love Liberation. I think it's a really great classic song with some high Queen influence. That's one of the styles of the band that I really like, is when they embrace this Queen sound with these really expressive vocals and this piano melody, and it's really grand and pomp rock expressiveness. I just really like that. Just really fun track. Won't Stand Down is a heavier track with a metal feel to it and a strong beat, some expansive synths. Heavy but catchy and fun. I really like that. You Make Me Feel Like It's Halloween is just pure poppy 80s fun with a sinister edge. It's nice to have a new Halloween theme song out there, in the style of something like Thriller. There's not enough of those, right? And we're right in the thick of like the Halloween time anyways, so that's really fun. Verona is a really great highlight as well, a soaring anthem style song that just reaches into the heaven with some U2 inspired guitar. Euphoria is similar in that vein and also soars with this uplifting sound to it. So it's a really fun, once again, it's a short record. It's fun to get through. There's a lot of variety and different types of things. It's really a good tour of Muse and their sound throughout the years. And there's just a lot of fun songs to enjoy. And like I said, it's not like the most artistically sound album they've ever crafted. It has its downfalls. It can be a bit derivative of their past works, but is just an enjoyable listen through. I found it to be a really fun time, so I really enjoyed that record and wanted to talk about it. Now let's get into a record I really love. This is Toehider's album, I Have Little to No Memory of These Memories. And this is the project of Australian artist Mike Mills, who's just a multi-instrumentalist talent who does everything on this record, and I'm so impressed with Mike Mills. He's an incredible artist. He works a lot with Ayreon on the past couple albums. He's been a big heavy feature on Ayreon and doing these really intricate vocal harmonies and a cappella type sections, and he just has this voice similar to almost Freddie Mercury that is so versatile and so expressive. He can sing in this high upper register, and it's incredible when he does these vocal harmonies and blends that are really creative and interesting. And that's how the album really starts up, is with this Queen-style Freddie Mercury a cappella vocal that's just really fun and a great introduction to what's a really fun, exciting record that goes through so many different musical styles and has so much fun baked into the proceedings. I just really love it. It has everything from prog to metal to 80s style synth work to folk to soundtrack music to video game sounds. It's just everything is thrown into this melting pot, and that's exactly what I love. It reminds me of Haken at times, who I really love when they delve into these different styles and do that sort of thing as well. It's a big concept album. It's a singular track. It's a 47-minute track that tells this continuous story throughout a narrative and these different chapters, and it's just really bold that he decided to just make it one track. He didn't split it up into sections, he didn't split it out into different songs. This is just one experience. It's meant to be listened to as one singular piece of music, similar to like Thick as a Brick or something like that, a big conceptual record that tells a storyline. And the story is a bit funny and interesting, almost has a Monty Python sense of humor. It has a narrator who's infusing a lot of humor as he tells this story, tells a lot about memories and adding these new memories to these people, this interconnected story. He describes it as the whole thing tells the story of a man, a woman, a huge bird, a dumb alien, and two boats that get modded to facilitate an outer space confrontation. So it's a wild storyline. It's really creative, and I adore it. I think it's super fun. What's also interesting is there's two different endings depending on if you get the CD version or the vinyl version. So you get a little bit of a darker ending, I believe, on the vinyl version, where the CD version or the download version is a bit more uplifting and more of a positive ending. So it's kind of fun that he's doing such adventurous work here. By not only the sound itself on the record is fun and expressive, but just the nature of how he's framing it on whichever format that it's on. But going through the album, there's just so much baked in, it's impossible to discuss everything that you've got in here. There's that opening Queen-style a cappella vocal that I mentioned, leading into a heavy, quirky, progressive metal section similar to something Haken would do. There's a great folky style section introduced with some great acoustic guitar playing about 8 minutes in. There's a funky, cool section, poppier vibe. About 12 minutes in, we get a cool, sludgier, heavy metal style at 17 minutes. 22 minutes, we get like a new wavy 80s rock feel, leading into some 80s hair metal, 80s synths, and 80s programmed drums in the mix, similar to Haken's Affinity record. We get some heavy riffage about 30 minutes into it, some 90s alternative grunge style. 37 minutes in, we get kind of a dreamy psychedelic, ambient, soundscapey type feel, and then it ends with more of an uplifting 80s ballad style feel with a bit of a darker edge in sections. So just so much variety. I just wanted to go through those as a explanation of all the different styles that you hear on this record as you go through it. And there's even more than what I mentioned. There's just so much baked in. There's so much to unpack and uncover, and that's the best style album for me, is just stuff that has so many layers and so many interesting things to unpack and to listen to. And so it's just a blast of an album that I can't recommend enough. One of my favorites of the year. I've just really been loving. And the first time I listened to it, I was really blown away by about the first half or so of the record, and then I felt like it wandered off a little bit towards the second half. But listening to it more, it reveals itself more and more, and I'm starting to understand all of the layers to it, and it's becoming even better, even those sections that I thought were weaker upon first listen. So definitely one to continue listening to continue developing a love for and uncovering hidden depths in the music. That's what it's all about. So I love that record. Another record I love that came out in the past month or so is an album by Dim Gray called Firmament.
I will reach your shore.
Dim Gray is made up of Oscar Holzdorf on vocals and keyboards, Hakon Hoiberg on guitars and vocals, and Tom Ian Klugland on drums and vocals. But they each have many contributions to the record. They're a great trio of musicians coming from an interesting range of musical backgrounds, from black metal to 1960s guitar, modern prog, electronic, movie music. You hear all these elements. It's sort of a mixing pot of different things on this record. This is their second release, I believe. They self-released their first album, but this one's been picked up by English Electric Records, the label connected to Big Big Train. I believe one of the members, Oscar, is joining Big Big Train on tour as well, playing some keyboards for them. So there's a bit of a connection between them and Big Big Train. And the big takeaway for me of this record, listening to it, is it's not really a prog album. I mainly talk about progressive rock music on this channel, but I feel like this one is more this lush sounding indie pop music. But there's so much great layering in the musical styles. There's so much great soundscapes being added to the mix here that it makes it, it's progressive in spirit because there's so many different things layered on top of another. So it doesn't just fit the mold of a standard indie pop record. It goes through so many different changes and different things. It just has a great mix to it, almost a cinematic quality, sonically really pleasing. This is a great album to listen to on headphones. Undertow is a classic track from it. Intense strings and orchestral elements come to the front, bringing a large soundscape and lots of emotion. That's another great thing about this album. There's a lot of baked-in emotion, the singer just has a very emotive voice that's able to bring out all of these feelings, and that is really impressive to me. Avalon the Tide is a major highlight of the album. Gorgeous vocal melodies over a lush arrangement, some beautiful keys and strings, just really beautiful. And to me, their superpower as a group is the arrangements, that they're able to build these lush, really enriched arrangements with a lot of different instruments and adding strings on top of keyboards, and all of these sounds come together to create this beautiful cinematic scope that I really appreciate. Just orchestral and folky. There's a bit of a folky vibe here. It's bringing you into this Scandinavian dream world. It's a gorgeous album, and it becomes more addictive the more you listen to it. Cannons is another highlight of a track, a refreshing folky song with plucking strings and uplifting mood. Just so many highlights to mention on the record, but it just has this singular feel to it, of this folky vibe that you're traveling through this fantastical wonderland with these wonderful musicians who are just so talented at what they do. So really, really a fan of this, and really strongly recommend it, even if it's not the typical prog music that I tend to gravitate towards. It's just a beautiful sounding album, and sometimes I need that in my repertoire. So one of my favorites on this list. I really recommend that. It's a beautiful album to check out. Next, I wanted to mention Joshua Batten and his new album, Learn to Live Again. Joshua Batten is based in Melbourne, Australia. And this album is quite unique because it's a concept record that goes through some personal struggles. Joshua's own personal perspective, basically about the pandemic and the anxiety and depression it caused. But it's made more general, so it doesn't have to be just about the pandemic, but about life in general, about a big change when something major happens in society, and how you deal with it, how you handle it with your own personal demons and troubles that you have. So it's a very personal record, and I appreciate the lyrical content because I deal with a lot of anxiety, and especially through the pandemic, there was a lot of events and things that really sparked that anxiety and made it a lot worse. And I think it's a great topic to delve into and really special and important to talk about. And the album, even though it delves into these darker subject matters, it ends on a more uplifting note. So it's not just this dark, depressing thing, but more of a, trying to deal with the grief and the pain and all of these sorts of things, but coming out on the other side of it more uplifted, more knowledgeable about who you are and about how you deal with these types of things and how you can carry forward with hope in the world and being able to grow from it. So I think that's a really great perspective, and I really appreciate that in the lyrical content. It's split up into different parts. We've got part 1, distress, part 2, depression, part 3, which is assessment, and then finally acceptance. So it's taking you through these multi-step processes, kind of like the 12 steps or something like that, where it's taking you through a process of grief and trying to accept what you're going through eventually. So, and the music, it threw me off at first because I find this to be very country flavored, which isn't usually my typical favorite style. There's a lot of folk elements, blues rock, things like that. It has little touchstones of prog baked in, but I feel like the overall aesthetic to me, it's more of a singer-songwriter folk country style album, but done in a conceptual manner with a continuing story and thematic elements that connect all these songs together. But as I delved deeper and listened more to the music, I was starting to uncover little touchstones of different styles and different musical genres and things that I could identify as more progressive here and there. So, but largely it's a lot of that singer-songwriter style, and Joshua Batten is just really great at it. He's an incredible vocalist, incredible songwriter. There's just so many great melodies and hooks in here that just really stick with me and has made for a really enjoyable listen. And a lot of these tracks just are still in my mind, and I can re-listen to them over and over and really connect with them because of those catchy melodies that are all over the record. We start with a sweet-sounding string section in the prologue before we're introduced to Joshua's beautiful voice. Then there's some more country-tinged anthems and blues rock-style moments with Heavy Road and Waiting for the Moment. Fortress is an early favorite for me on the record with a bit of a groovy riff and almost a laid-back jazzy-style feel to it. I really like this. O Britannia is another great track that adds another facet to his sound of more fun, boppier, power pop style, kind of like late period Beatles or even like Jellyfish, that sort of style of music. A great highlight to the record. I really also like the 1-2 punch of Circuit Breaker, which is one of the more proggier moments, a shorter track, but largely instrumental with these great expressive drums and great guitar flourishes with some synth soloing added to it. And that leads into Existential Guardian, which is the most big, expansive prog piece on the record. Starts with this really subdued, great piano melody and vocal. Almost has a bit of an Elton John vibe, think Funeral for a Friend. And such a great anthemic chorus arises from this darker moment. There's some great darker melodies and themes in the piano playing and guitars, and it just moves through so many different sections and tells a great story and is just really expressive, and it culminates in a really great soaring guitar solo. Great showcase for everything Joshua Batten is all about and his incredible talents. Then we end with 3 songs that are much more in that poppier direction. A classic blues song called Cut You Adrift, Open Box, which is a really life-affirming pop song, and The End Is Not the End, a great folk-tinged finale with an uplifting anthemic feel. So overall, a really great record with some great themes, great lyrical content, and Joshua is just such a talent. He has a great vocal, a great sense of good melody. A lot of this was reminding me of Neil Morse's more singer-songwriter type work, kind of like Life and Times I was thinking about. So I think there's a bit of that influence baked in, which is, of course, high praise from me because I'm such a Neil Morse fan. So I've grown to really appreciate and love this record the more I listen. And even though I was thrown off a bit that it was so country focused at my first listen through, I've been able to enjoy it and uncover the hidden depths and realize what he's doing as a songwriter and finding those great melodies baked in. So really great record. I recommend checking out as well. I also got on my list King's X and their new record 3 Sides of One. Comeback album after 14-year hiatus. It's a solid lineup of tunes in their typical style, hard rock with some progressive leanings, sprinkled with some Beatles-esque harmonies. They're not really a full-on progressive rock band, but I think a lot of people who like progressive rock like this band because they have a good variety of sounds to them. They have this great hard rock edge, but they also have a Beatles style aesthetic to them. So it's a really good blend of style that I really think people come to love from them. And this album is just more of that. It's nothing really special to me. I think it's solid, but it's not anything that raises to the heights of their best stuff. But, it's a really solid, fun album to listen to. Let It Rain is a powerful opener with almost a garage band feel. I feel like the production here is a bit raw on purpose. It feels like it's them just jamming out of their garage and really just being themselves and being real. And I think that was an interesting touch in the production. Nothing But the Truth has a bit of a sludgy blues flavor with a gospel edge, giving Ty a chance to shine with a killer guitar solo. Give It Up is a fun, driving, funky rocker, really great driving rhythms and bass grooves, almost a call and response style vocal. This is just one of the more fun tracks here. I Love All God's Children, a great slow burning ballad with epic guitars and great vocals. Take the Time is another great track with some sublime Beatles-inspired vocal harmonies and lighter acoustic guitar. She Called Me Home is another great solid rocker with a bit of a psychedelic sound to it, harkening back to this late 60s era, but with a hard rock edge, which is a big part of what they do, is this sort of 60s style Beatles-esque sound, but bringing it into a more modern, harder rock style. And I really appreciate that. And this is just a really solid, it's a shorter record, it's fun to listen through, and it just has a bunch of solid tunes on it. So I recommend it. It's a good one. If you like this band, if you like that style, it's another solid listen. So the band, even though they've been around for so long, they're still sounding really great and still killing it in the musical department. So I really like that one. And then finally, I'm going to end this on Cosmograf and the album Heroic Materials. Which Cosmograf is Robin Armstrong is the main artist here who's written this music, contributes all the vocals, guitars, keyboards, bass. There's a bit of piano from Danny Manners, who was part of Big Big Train. Kyle Fenton on drums joins as well, but really it's largely Robin Armstrong and his album here that he's crafted. It's a concept album written in the perspective of 99-year-old former World War II Spitfire pilot Billy May, his reflections on an age gone by. It also blends in a somewhat modern realization that we have to change in order to protect the planet moving forward, so there's a bit of that element in it as well. It's a looking back and a nostalgia trip, but also looking forward into, what do we need to change to proceed moving forward with the planet, and what do we need to do to improve the things that are going wrong in our current society. So I think there's a lot baked in here that's really compelling. I feel the heavy Pink Floyd influence here. It's a conceptual album, so you hear these sound clips and speaking passages reminiscent to like The Wall or Final Cut from Pink Floyd, atmospheric build-ups and sections, some David Gilmour style guitar solos. There's a great prominent role for the piano throughout, which is a really beautiful addition. Some great beautiful piano sections, and the guitar is utilized more to highlight these big epic moments throughout the story with these soaring solos that are really great. I Recall sets the stage with some really plaintive soaring falsetto vocals and a beautiful piano melody before we're led into Heroic Materials, which is a really expanded piece, some interesting keyboards, and once again that guitar soloing to great heights. The piano adds a lot of beauty to this piece. Credited to Danny Manners, as I mentioned, an excellent Floydian build-up. Just so much emotion on this record through the vocals and through the playing. Just a lot of feeling that is coming out here. British Made was a single for the album and is somewhat of a perfect 5-minute explanation of what the album's all about, with some heartfelt emotional vocals and swelling music that tells a great story. If Things Don't Change is a gear shift, like I said, that talks about more of a future forward perspective of what we need to do to protect our planet moving forward. This fossil fuel powered world that he's nostalgic for with these British made cars and aeroplanes needs to be left behind for mankind to survive. We need to adapt and be brought into a new era in order to protect our planet, I suppose, is what we're talking about here. Regretful Refrain is another beautiful track that continues with this achingly beautiful guitar solo in that Pink Floyd style, a bit bluesy, before strumming acoustic guitar and reflective vocals come in, maybe the emotional peak of the whole album. and The Better World harkens back to the opening, bringing this whole theme and album to a close. So a really beautiful album, Pink Floyd inspirations all over the place with some great expressive David Gilmour style guitars, some great singing, some conceptual work that brings this piece all together. And it's just a great listen that I recommend if you like this sort of emotional style record with a great theme and a great concept. So those are the albums that I have for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this and found something on this list to your taste. A lot of great records here. I really highly recommend all of them. There's a lot to enjoy. I thought that it's been a bit disappointing lately over the past month or so. I haven't found a lot of releases that have really captivated me, especially. But listening through this list and listening to them over again and listening to them to craft notes for these reviews and such, I was just blown away by how talented these artists are, how great these albums turned out to be, and I just am a real fan, and I'm grateful for this incredible music that I get to experience. And I just want to share it with you guys and hope you guys enjoy it as well. So just enjoy the music. That's really the tagline of the show. I want you guys to find something here that really touches you and gives you something to enjoy. So thank you guys once again for joining me. Hopefully you appreciated this show, and I hope to come out with another one at least by the end of the year to cover some of the upcoming albums. So thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you guys hopefully in another video. Bye!